Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be using Gemini to convert this React Native code over to a SwiftUI app. And we're going to use Gemini to help make this code not only into SwiftUI, but also easily manageable and usable by breaking it up into small chunks. And we're going to combine that with a little bit of our own developer knowledge to make this a great app, not only for the visuals, but also helping it out on understanding accessibility. If that sounds like something you're interested in, stay tuned. So on the left screen here, we have our component code that was generated by a different AI from a friend of mine at work. And he's asked me to try to convert this to SwiftUI. And so I wanted to see if Gemini could do it, and if so, how well it would work. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go into our file here, press Command A, and we're going to copy all of that code over. And so we are going to ask Gemini if it can convert that code over. So let's give it a shot. Let's say convert this React code to SwiftUI. Now, if you come across this video in the future, you can see here that we're using Gemini 2.5 Flash on the experimental. And so we just pasted all of our code in there from our React project. So let's see if it can automatically convert that code for us. Nice, it looks like it's done. So it figured out that it's React Native code, and it figured out the name of the calculator, which is very cool. And let's see about the code. So it's giving us all our assumptions. And there we go. There's a bunch of code. So rather than read it, let's just give it a shot and see what happens. So here I have a brand new SwiftUI project. And so let's go ahead and let's just paste in our code here. Looks like it brought in combine. Don't know if we'll need that, but we will see. So it says it's got one error, so let's see what our error is. Cannot find content view. That's okay, because it brought in the correct TVM calculator view. And now we need to use that in our main project here. So let's go back and let's say that this is the view that we want to display. There we are. Nice. It actually looked like it did a pretty good job. First try. All right, let's try it out and see if it works. Let's see if we can click switch to annual and see what happens. Nice, it swapped it to the annual. See if we switch it to months, what happens? Very cool, swap to months. Now let's compare that, because I've got the real version of the calculator over here. So if it says switch to annual, then this is 500 and it's monthly. And if it goes to annual, it's 6,000. So let's see. There we go. And over here on our investment period, we've got years as 30. But if we click months, we say 360. And if we go over here and we click months, this also says 360 and changes. Very cool. Now the add investment button doesn't look quite the same, and it's not in the same spot, but the calculate button looks very similar. So that's pretty cool. All right, let's click calculate and we'll see what we get. So here our calculator says $691,150.47. Let's try it out over here. And it's got a results section that says $691,150.47. Very cool. And it's got our total contributions and interest earned, and they all appear to match. Awesome. Now, with this being React code, I wonder how well Gemini did at making this actual good app code. And what I mean by that is, did they actually consider light and dark mode, for example? So let's give that a shot. Let's check out our color scheme variants side by side. And let's make this a little larger here so that we can see it. There we go. Okay, as we can see, you can still read everything. It is a little hard to see these buttons, but that's not bad. Our calculate button is a very, very bright blue, so we might want to change that. And our add investment button is a very bright green, so we can work on that. But other than that, let's try to calculate this. So it won't let us use the calculate while we're in that particular mode. So let's go back to a single mode, and let's convert it to dark mode here. Let's try to calculate it and see if our results look the same. Nice, the results don't look too bad in dark mode either. Very cool. All right, well then let's see what it looks like with all of the dynamic type variants. So if you didn't know, Apple gives us this in our preview window to see how each of the dynamic types, all the way from very small to very large, looks on our screen. And it looks like we can't scroll these here. So then let's go back to our single view and let's change this back to light mode since we know that dark mode works, and let's just crank up the dynamic type size here. And let's see how this looks on a screen with very large text. It actually doesn't look bad at all. And our add investment button, okay, that's a little bit off, but not too bad. So we just click calculate and let's see if our results line up. I was worried about this a little bit. So this is a pretty common mistake for a lot of developers, and looks like Gemini made the same mistake. It's better to break this into 2 lines than it is to have it side by side just for accessibility's sake. But overall, for not having to write any code and just taking seconds to run, that is not bad at all. So let's go in and let's see if we can help Gemini out just a little bit with its total contribution section here in the results. There we are. So we found this section in our code. And so let's wrap this in a view that fits. And then we will choose to have the axis as horizontal. And for our content, we're just going to copy this, or cut this, I should say, and paste it in here. Do it one more time, but this time we want a V-stack with an alignment of leading. And we don't need this spacer. There we are. All right, and let's give that a shot and see if that fixed it for us. Okay, it looks like it's still doing the same thing. So I wonder if Gemini may have gotten the code a little confused. Let's try it out. Let's do a search. Okay, so we can see up here in our search that we've got 3 matches. One here, and another one here in our code. So let's try putting our view that fits here and see if maybe we were just editing the wrong spot in our code. So we will choose horizontal again for this axis, and then we will paste that code again. So what that horizontal does in the view that fits is it says if the view fits in the horizontal axis, then we will display the first one, and if it doesn't, then we'll display the second one. And so let's go ahead and get rid of that spacer here. And let's try our code one more time. Once it's done rebuilding, there we go. So let's click calculate, and then we'll scroll down. There we go. That looks a lot better. So let's go ahead and do the same thing for our total interest earned. And we will say that this is a view that fits in the horizontal axis. And for the content, we will just use the one that's already there. And again, we will copy this and make it a V-stack with an alignment of dot leading. And we will remove this spacer. Now, as we could see before, over here in our real view, our web view, we can see that the total contributions are bolded and this text looks like it's regular size. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's change this to a bold font, and we'll do the same thing here. This will be dot bold, and then we'll do the same thing on both of our total contribution values. We'll make them bold. There we are. And that should help us be able to tell the difference between the label and the value. So let's scroll down and click calculate one more time and see how it looks. Nice, that looks a little bit better. Very cool. So now that we've got this total contribution section working, let's go back to Gemini, because I noticed something whenever we copied and pasted our code over. I noticed that these initial amounts are strings, and these future and all our values appear to be doubles. It's not It's not actually great practice to use doubles whenever you're dealing with financial data, just because the precision isn't there. For example, if you in Swift, if you do 0.1 plus 0.2, you actually end up with 0.3, 0, 0, 0, a whole bunch of zeros, and then a 4 at the end. So the precision isn't actually where it needs to be when you're dealing with financial data when you use doubles. So let's see if we can ask Gemini to convert these to using decimal values. Can you convert the inputs to take a decimal value, and can you also use decimal types for all of the numeric types instead of double? Nice, it looks like it got it. So let's give that a shot too. Actually, let's copy our view that fits code into there and see if we can get it to update that value. So let's let it know. I updated some of the view with a view that fits modifier that works better for accessibility. Can you update the following code to use decimal types as well? And we'll paste in our following code there. All right, looks like it's done. Let's check it out. Okay, so that isn't bad. The identifiable with an int, that will probably be fine. And it looks like everything else is using decimal. So let's give that a shot and try it out. So we will select all our code with Command A, and then we'll paste over that code with our new code. And we will check out the build and see what's going on. Looks like that caused a lot of build errors. Let's see what's happening here. So we have a lot of value of type decimal has no member double value. So those are interesting. Let's let Gemini know and see if it can fix that. I am getting several errors that say value of type decimal has no member. Can you remove those method calls on the double types? All right, looks like it's done. So let's check this out and see if this is any better. So we will highlight all our code here and replace it with the new code, and we'll let it rebuild. Build failed, but this time there's only one failure. Okay, so let's see what it is. The compiler is unable to type check this expression in a reasonable time. Try breaking up the expression into distinct sub-expressions. So this is an error in Swift, and what it means is, long story short, that the compiler can't figure out what is wrong with your Swift code, which is kind of strange because it actually controls how the Swift code is viewed. So what that means is we just need to break this up into smaller chunks and figure out where our problem is. So in order to do that, we are going to go through our code, and I've got the code folding ribbon turned on, which is a really nice feature when you're doing this kind of stuff. But it allows us to collapse certain sections of our code, and then we can try to go in and comment that individual code out. So I always like to try to find the deepest section, and that looks like this is going a lot deeper. So let's start in here and see if this is our problem. Oh, investments may be a little bit deeper than that. Yeah, looks like they are. Okay, so let's do that. Let's start with our investment section. So we'll collapse this combined if statement here. So we will just comment that code out with command and /. and then we will try to rebuild and see what happens. Now, if this works, that means our problem code is inside the commented out section. And if it doesn't work, that means that so see, it failed. So that means that the problem code is actually farther outside of this commented out section. So we will just uncomment that with Command Z, and we will go up a little bit higher in our code. And let's just try this whole results block. Let's see if something in the results is causing the problem. So let's try that. And then we'll rebuild. Build failed again. Okay, so I guess it's a little bit higher up. So let's try that. Let's go up a little bit higher. And let's try this entire inner VStack. Let's see if we can narrow it down to something in our view. Build failed. Okay, so that's interesting. So let's uncomment that. That failed pretty quickly. Type any has no member padding. That's because we commented out the VStack, but not the padding. So let's go ahead and let's do that and make sure our build works. Good, it does still work. All right, and so that means it is somewhere else in our code. So let's start going through, and we'll just start commenting out blocks of code one at a time and see if we can find where the problem is. Build succeeded. All right, well, that was fast. All right, so that means that our problem code is somewhere inside of this for each statement that, as you can see, is not very small. It goes from line 314 and it starts at 237, so almost 100 lines of code. So let's start going through and start commenting out individual sections of this and see this for each block and see if we can find where the problem is inside of here. So let's try our H stack and just build that. All right, looks like our build failed. So let's try going down to our next stack and see if we can find that. There we go. We'll comment that one out and try to build one more time. All right, that one failed too. So let's go down to the next one. And so the reason we're doing this, and we'll rebuild. So the reason we're doing this is we are trying to see, we've got a large haystack and we're trying to find a small needle inside that haystack. So in order to break this up, we are taking our small chunks of code and we're commenting them out one at a time in order to break that large haystack up into smaller haystacks, and that way we can search through a smaller haystack and find the needle a little bit faster and easier. So now we know that the build succeeded whenever we commented this code out. So let's confirm that that's the only spot that has a problem by bringing this code back in, and we'll rebuild to see if it succeeds. If it does, that means the problem is only here. And if it doesn't, that means there's also a problem here too. So let's try that out and see if we can narrow this problem down a little bit more. All right, it looks like that still failed. So let's comment that back out. And then let's try bringing our H stack back in. And if this works, that will mean that our problem is in these two. It looks like it did. So it looks like our problem is just in these two VStacks. So let's see if we can figure out what's going on here. So let's uncomment this one first, and let's take a look and see what we've got. So it has, and let's collapse our project navigator here just so we can see things a little easier. So we've got a VStack with alignment leading, that looks correct, and a text of an initial investment. And then we are binding a decimal value directly with format, like we asked it to. So it's using a text field, enter initial amount with a value of the initial amount and a format with a currency code. And we don't have to do the locale.currency code because we are not looking for a specific locale for the user. We're just wanting USD for everything by default. And then it looks like this content type of currency code, decimal pad, we could also just do, instead of calling the full method here, we can also just call rounded border on our text field style. That may help. So let's start commenting these modifiers out and see if it is just the modifiers or if it is something inside our text field. So let's comment out those modifiers and rebuild. All right, so it succeeded. So that tells me that it may be one of the modifiers that's having trouble. So let's go through and we'll bring that first one back in and comment out these bottom two, see if it builds. Build succeeded. Okay, so let's bring this second one back in. Build succeeded. Try bringing the last one back in. Looks like our build failed. Okay, so our text content type with a currency code, that seems to be causing us a problem. So let's see if that is a Swift method. So we will try to type it ourselves and see what it takes. So our content type takes a text content type which sets the text content type for this view, which the system uses to offer suggestions while the user enters text on an iOS or tvOS device. Okay, so that sounds like a good thing. So let's see what options we get. So a text content type is an address, city, cellular. Let's see if they have currency. It doesn't look like they have a currency code. So that is probably our issue. So then we need to figure out where it's getting this currency code. So let's jump to the definition and see if we can find out where that's coming from. It looks like it could bring it in from several places. So we may not need this for our keyboard. So let's go ahead and just try taking that out. And let's rebuild. Build succeeded. Very cool. So let's come over here and see if we have a text content type. Oh, we do. We've got a text content type of currency code. So let's try that. All right, so let's try getting rid of this and then seeing if our code will build now. Cool, it succeeded. And again, we don't need this locale because our user or the person that originally created this app just wants USD for right now. So there we go. So that's build succeeded. So let's run it one more time just to make sure. There we are. And then let's replay our preview and see if our preview still works. Very cool. Looks like our preview does in fact still work. And it's got our investments there. There we go. And our total contribution. Let's try calculating and see if we get our same value that we got before. Okay, and those values all look the same. Very cool. All right. Now there's one other thing that we want to try to do, and that is, as you can see, this view is really, really large, which means that if we're ever going to use this in the future or have to maintain this in the future, which we will, all software eventually has to be maintained or cleaned up, otherwise it'll stop working. Actually, I've got a friend that always says that software is like a garden. As long as you tend it and take care of it, it'll do well for you. But if you leave it alone, it will grow weeds and it won't produce good fruit for you. And so using that same principle, in order to maintain this more safely and make it easier for maintaining in the long run, we don't want to have to maintain a giant view that's 500 lines of code. So let's see if we could get Gemini to break this code up for us. So we will copy this code and let's take it back over to Gemini and let's ask Gemini, this code is really large. Can you break it up into smaller views and methods for me? And we'll paste our code in there. There we go. Gemini even said the same thing. Okay, let's break it down into smaller, more manageable views and helper methods. This improves readability, maintainability, and potential reusability. Very cool. So it looks like they're creating a separate section for the inputs and results and the combined results. That's very cool. So let's give it a shot and then we'll copy our code, come back over here and paste it into our project. And let's rebuild and see what we've got. Build succeeded. All right. So let's replay our preview here and see how it looks. Nice. Everything appears to be this very same. So let's go ahead and let's make this text size a little bit more reasonable here. There we go. All right, so as we can see, we've got all our values here. Do our buttons work? Yes, our buttons still work. Very cool. And let's try to calculate and see what our results are. Okay, so it kind of squashed our results down. Our results aren't taking up the full width of the screen anymore. But ultimately, that's not as big of a deal. Let's see what it looks like on a regular size piece of text here. And we will recalculate. Okay, cool. And so it breaks back down into a horizontal stack. And then that actually fills the full width. So I think that will work for us. That looks like we are done with this refactor. And we didn't hardly have to write any code at all. AI was able to do most of it for us, which is an extremely powerful tool in the developer's tool belt. A lot of people are worried that AI will take their dev jobs, and that's one thing that I've come to figure out is AI was pretty good, as we saw at first. It was able to create a view in a different language, and it only took just a few seconds to generate, which could be scary to a developer. But if you look at it the way that I do, that is a amazingly powerful tool in your developer toolbox. You can take that code from a language that you either don't know or aren't very familiar with and bring it into something you do know and are an expert in, and then you can use that AI to help guide it to make smaller, more maintainable, and amazing code that you will love working in long into the future. So let's go ahead and let's check out some of the refactors that this thing did and see how it squashed our code down for us. So let's scroll back up to the top, and we'll just start at the top. Okay, so it's got our structs here, which we saw before. So it's still using a currency formatter, which we shouldn't need in SwiftUI. It's using a number formatter, which again we shouldn't need in SwiftUI either. But we've got our input section here, which is a view. And so that is something that we could break out into its own individual file to help make this smaller. So let's go ahead and do that. In fact, let's just say this is the investment input section, so we'll cut that out. We'll go into our project navigator, create a new file, and we will say this is our investment input section view. And then in here we will paste our code. Doesn't have the word view there, so let's fix that. And we'll remove it from our file name here. All right, and then it says it's got some parameters that we'll need to add, so let's add those parameters. Cool, and then so we can use Control M to put all those parameters on their own line. So we'll say we have an index of 1, total investment of 1. This onRemove takes a function, and so we won't use that. Our total contribution period takes a function, so we don't need this, and we don't need our toggle investment period. But we will need to provide bindings for these values here. So let's say is monthly. Let's say that that is a constant of true. Actually, let's say it's a constant of false, just to make life interesting. And is period months, we'll make this also a constant of false. Okay? And now our investment takes a binding of an investment. So let's say that this takes a constant with a value of investment, and so we'll initialize our investment here. And we'll highlight this, and again press Control M to do this on multiple lines. And so we'll say our ID is 1, our initial amount is 100, our contribution is 100, our annual return is 10, and let's say the period is 1. And with that, our preview should be working. Very cool, we've got our preview working. Okay, and then let's go back to our view here. And now we don't need this mark comment, so let's take that out. And this is our results section, so let's go ahead and let's break that out into its own file. And so this is called investment result section. And so we'll come back over here, we'll create a new SwiftUI view, call it investment result section. And then we will just paste our code here. And again, we're missing the arguments, so let's let SwiftUI fix that for us. So it takes a onSave, which we'll ignore for now. And let's go ahead and let's put these on multiple lines. So again, Control M, and we'll put this on the next line there. And then our index will be just 1, and our TVM result will take these values here. So let's go ahead and again put these on there online with Command or Control M, sorry. And our future value, let's say it's 1,000. Our total contributions are 1. Our total interest is 1. And this takes an array of yearly breakdowns. So let's pass in a yearly breakdown item with a year of 1, a balance of 1, contribution of 1, and interest of 1. So that should get our preview working. And let's bring this closure back onto one line since it's just an empty closure. There we go. Very cool. And let's go back to our content view. And again, we don't need that mark comment, so let's get rid of it. And now we are into our combined results section. So let's take that and let's move it into its own file too. And so we will cut that out, come back over here, Command N to create a new file, create a new file called combined results section, and then we will paste in the code that we just cut. There we are. And now we will add the missing parameters for our view, and we'll highlight this, press Ctrl plus M for multi-line. We will make an empty on save. Our total investments is 1, and our TVM result, again, we'll multi-line this too. So Control M. We'll make our future value 1,000, total contributions 1, total interest 1, and we will add our yearly breakdown with some sample data of everything being 1. There we are. Go back into our content view, and again we will get rid of this mark comment. There we are. And now our view is much smaller and much more manageable. We still do have a lot of these helper functions here that we could probably just break out into something like a view model. So let's go ahead and collapse all of these. There we go. And it looks like it put all the helper functions in our view code. All right, and with that, let's give this project a run and see how it looks on an iPhone. All right, so now we have here the two calculators side by side. So let's, as we've seen on our web view here, what our value is, and that matches this for the defaults. So let's try changing some things up. So let's go over here, and instead of 10,000, let's just say 100. And instead of 6,000, we'll just say 6. Let's say 12% annual return and 3,600 months. And let's calculate that and see what we get. That's a very large future value. All right, so let's do the same thing here on our iOS app. So let's select this value, and we will say $100 here, and we will say our monthly contribution, nope, we want our annual contribution to be $6, and our annual return is 12, and our investment period is 3,600 months. And let's click calculate. Let's see. Yep. So something looks very wrong with this calculation. This is possibly another downside to AI. A future value calculator is a formula that's well known and defined and easy to look up online. So just be careful using AI. Again, like we've seen, it's not perfect, but it is a good tool in your tool belt. And with that, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And if you leave a comment, just be nice about it. That's all I ask. Thanks. Have a great day.